Guest characters have become increasingly common in fighting games lately. Sometimes they're from movies or TV shows, and sometimes they're from other video games, but their goal is always to sell more copies of the game, whereas regular DLC characters are simply trying to sell themselves. In other words, picture somebody who's never bought a single Soul Calibur game, but then they see Geralt and think, wow, I love The Witcher, what game is this? Soul Calibur 6, huh? You know what? I think I might buy that. Or for another example, maybe you're somebody who really loves playing King of Fighters, but that's the only fighting game you stick to. Until one day you see Terry Bogard in Street Fighter 6 and think, you know what, I'll give that game a try. It's a very clever form of marketing and usually does get more sales for the game. However, sometimes developers miss the mark by adding a character that just feels strange. And that can be for several reasons. Maybe they don't fit well on the roster or match the tone of the game very well, and sometimes the character is just not very popular, which causes players to question, why is this character in the game at all? Who asked for this character? So today, let's check out the worst guest characters in fighting game history. Or maybe it's better to just call them strange. And keep in mind, I'm not talking about their gameplay, which could actually be very good. Instead, I'm referring to their reception among the community. In other words, players did not like them, or at least thought the choice was really weird. But real quick, let's talk about gamer subs, because their amazing Christmas sale starts today, and it gives you free stuff with every purchase. If you buy one tub, that gets your choice of either the newest Pixel Cups Celebration or the newest Waifu Cup, named All I Want for Christmas is Uwu. Very cute. But if you buy 2 tubs, that unlocks a matching shirt from the same set. And if you buy 3 tubs, then you get the first ever official Gamer Subs Christmas stocking, and a brand new mousepad inspired by the VTuber Girl Thigh label. And if you buy 4 tubs from Gamer Subs, then you receive the Gamer's Little Helper, a brand new jug to keep things festive. And once you unlock all 5 tiers, then you receive the entire drop plus the perfect holiday attire, the ugly Christmas sweater. Yeah, like I said, it's crazy. Gamer Subs is going big this holiday season and just giving you tons of extra free stuff. And don't forget to use code UNDERDOG with every purchase, because that gives you a discount. So not only will you get free stuff with every purchase, but you'll also save money with every purchase as well, and every purchase made with code UNDERDOG also helps support my channel too. And back to the video. First up, for a recent example, we have Clive Rossfield. If you're not a Tekken player, then you might be wondering why this trailer has so many dislikes. Because the gameplay overall looks pretty darn cool, and the stage itself is also amazing. From a presentation standpoint, everything about this trailer is incredible, so why are there so many dislikes? Well, Clive is from a recent Final Fantasy game, which doesn't exactly fit the tone of Tekken very well. And on top of that, I can't think of any fans asking for this character on social media, so he just came out of nowhere. Or in other words, he's not very appealing to Tekken fans. Not to mention, we already got Noctis in Tekken 7, who was also from a Final Fantasy game, which makes Clive feel unoriginal and therefore less interesting. But it's also worth mentioning that a ton of players hated fighting against Noctis in Tekken 7, and there's several reasons why. For starters, Noctis fought with a bunch of weapons which can't be parried, and most other characters in Tekken use hand-to-hand combat, so Noctis had a distinct advantage. But on top of that, he had better range and a projectile that was really good, and that's incredibly rare in Tekken to have a projectile. You get the idea. A ton of Tekken players hated fighting against Noctis. And since Clive is also from Final Fantasy and fights with a sword, has tons of magic and ranged attacks, it makes sense why players aren't excited to have another Noctis in their Tekken game. So that could also be responsible for a lot of the dislikes. But even so, there's a lesson to be learned here. Sometimes, even if your guest character looks really cool and has interesting attacks or really fun looking gameplay, sometimes that's not enough to make players like them. The character needs to feel fresh and also fit in the game's tone. And Clive Rossfield fails in both those regards. Say what you will about Ghostface, but at least a costume serial killer fits well in a Mortal Kombat game. And speaking of Mortal Kombat, let's look at Conan next. According to a recent poll, even my audience has a little excitement for this character, which is not a good look since most of my audience is Mortal Kombat lovers. Or in other words, the main target audience for this game is not interested in Conan. But why is that? The answer is quite simple. This character is old as hell, and most Mortal Kombat players are edgy teenagers or young adults, and as a result, many of them have never watched a single Conan movie or read the books. You get the idea. Or if they have seen a Conan movie, it would be the recent ones, not the ones featuring Arnold. And that's another issue. Conan is another Arnold character. The previous game had the Terminator, although in that game it kind of worked because the series had a ton of recent films. In fact, one of the movies was releasing the same year that Terminator was added to the game, so it made sense. The character was fresh, and there was also some cross-promotion there. But that's not the case for Conan, specifically Arnold as Conan, because most players have never heard of this guy, or at the very least, they're not big fans of his films. So when it comes to guest characters, the lesson here is much simpler. Pick a guest character who's actually popular. I'm not sure which boomer at NetherRealm picked this guy, but WB has a ton of video game characters to choose from. So why on earth did they choose the character whose last movie was 4 decades ago? I don't mean to be rude, but I feel like most people who grew up with those films are not playing Mortal Kombat 1. I just don't think that audience exists. Okay, but now it's time for a funny example. Nori Maru. Unless you played the Japanese version of Marvel vs. Capcom, then you likely have no clue who this character is, which is fine because most people on Earth never got to play him either. But his origin is still quite interesting, because he's literally based on a Japanese comedian named Noritake Kanashi, and he doodled the character himself on a piece of paper. And because one of the artists at Capcom liked his design and found it funny, the character was actually added to the game, which is already hilarious, but to make things even funnier, it's worth mentioning that the game's producer hated this character and did not want him in the game because he looked extremely uncool, and that's a direct quote, which means Nori Maru only exists thanks to the game's artist. And that's why this story is so interesting to me. It could never happen again today. You will never see a comedian's doodle get added to a fighting game. It's just not gonna happen. But with that said, this character is only playable in the Japanese version of the game, which means that even Capcom themselves understood that most players would not like him. Alright, but now finally, it's time for the last character. And let me know your thoughts on this guy in the comments, because to me, this is the strangest guest character in fighting game history. And that character's name is Negan in Tekken 7. This guest character is so strange because he has every single flaw that I've mentioned so far in this video. For example, Negan doesn't really fit the tone of Tekken at all, because he's from the horror genre, whereas Tekken is all about martial arts, which means we see Negan launching people sky high and then ground bouncing them. The whole thing just looks weird. Not to mention, Tekken 7 has no blood or gore whatsoever, which is the opposite of The Walking Dead. That show is known for violence, gore, all that stuff. So again, Negan does not fit the tone of Tekken very well. But next up, we have the popularity factor. Very similar to Conan, Negan's popularity had already started to decline years earlier. I personally never watched The Walking Dead show, but even I knew that its popularity was declining, mostly because everybody was talking about it on YouTube and how the series had fallen off. And on that same note, I'm not sure how many Tekken fans even watched The Walking Dead show, so that's one more issue worth noting. And finally, there's one more issue worth considering. Negan would never stand a chance against any of these Tekken characters. They can easily destroy brick walls, lift entire cars, you get the idea. The fighters in Tekken are next level, they're borderline superheroes, so watching them struggle to fight Negan is really funny. Though I suppose it's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but to me it does break the immersion a little bit to see Tekken characters struggling against Negan of all people. I'm not even sure if Negan is a big fighter in the show. Like, yeah, he can fight, but he's not known as the brawler. However, with all that said, Negan was not poorly received by the Tekken community. In other words, there was no outrage among the fanbase or anything like that. But how is that possible when he violates every rule mentioned so far in this video? He was not popular at the time, he does not fit the tone of the game or match the genre, and also Tekken fans were never clamoring to have Negan in the game. So with that in mind, why does it work? Honestly, I think the main reason could be because his debut trailer was so incredible. Namco Bandai literally recreated the most iconic scene from The Walking Dead show, but with the Tekken characters. So combine that with gameplay footage and you have an instant banger of a trailer. I think about it to this day. The Tekken 7 reveal trailer for Negan was simply incredible, and I think it won over fans instantly. But don't get it twisted, I still think that Negan feels bizarre in a Tekken game. But even so, overall, he succeeded. So I guess the lesson here is to fully commit when adding a guest character. Make their debut trailer incredible and impossible to forget. Alright everyone, there you have it, the strangest guest characters in fighting game history. If I missed anybody that you think is worth mentioning, then let me know about them in the comments down below. I hope everyone watching enjoyed this video. It's different than what I normally post, but even so, I thought it would be a fun topic and I hope you enjoyed watching. If you did, then please leave a like down below, it helps the channel out a ton, and if you haven't already, finish that combo by subscribing and ringing that bell so you never miss any future videos. Make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdog.